being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. It's fucking hard.
Yeah.
My mother would give me £2 for lunch money. On the way to school, there's a big supermarket like right next door, and I'll go in and I'll buy 4 packs of 5 jam donuts.
Okay.
And that cost me £2. And then I would go to school, and before the like reception bell went, I would have sold them all for double the money. I was in bed, couldn't fucking sleep, because I didn't care that I wasn't making money. I had money.
Right.
I cared that my staff making £3,000 or £4,000 a month, I wasn't going to be able to pay them. 2 months after we merged, I closed a $600,000 US deal with Lenovo, right? Big contract, nightmare. I'll tell you about that later. I'm not going to talk too much about it, it's very infancy, but I'm building it. I'm very excited about it. I want to disrupt Slack, Teams, Gmail. I won't go into any more than that.
Curiosity is the key to the imagination.
Break off your podcast, let's do this!
Dream the impossible dream. Welcome to Mike Helfman's Curiosity Podcast.
All right, we're on. Ben Bagg in the house.
Hello.
What's up?
How's it going?
Good.
We're back again.
Good. Yes. Good to see you again. So, for everybody who doesn't know you as well as I do, let's talk about your interesting childhood, the origin stories of Ben Bagg and how
Origin
this
story.
serial entrepreneur made it to Asia, started companies, started business coaching. Where did it all begin?
Where did it all begin? I mean, it's actually really hard to determine when I fully kind of got that entrepreneurial spirit, but I think with my dad, it kind of began there because he ran a company. He was an air refrigerational engineer.
Okay.
Which is like, in the back of supermarkets, you've got the big fridges. I think they were called cauldrons or something ridiculous like that. And he built those. That's what he did.
Those are expensive. I was in the food business for years. Cold rooms are not cheap.
And he did big ones for supermarkets and fisheries and things like that. And so obviously he was always running businesses, and he was a bit of a Dellboy, and any English audience will know who I mean by Dellboy.
Well, I don't know what a Dellboy is, so why don't you explain it to me?
Dellboy is Only Fools and Horses. It's a TV show. There's a guy called Derek Trotter, nicknamed Dellboy. He's a wheelie dealer.
Okay.
A bit dodgy. My dad was definitely a bit dodgy. I actually remember one time, I'm getting off track, but I remember one time I was with him at his workshop, and he was selling his car, and he had a van come to the car, and then a bloke was turning back the clock.
Okay.
So my dad was a Dellboy. He was a wheeler dealer.
This was before digital odometers and speedometers.
Yeah. It's like the Volvo estate. He was like turning it back. Anyway, so I obviously kind of had him in my life for a long time. And then I think when I was 13, 14, my mother would give me £2 for lunch money. And I had to walk to school, and on the way to school was a big supermarket like right next door, and I'd go in and I'd buy 4 packs of 5 jam donuts.
Okay.
And that cost me £2. And then I would go to school, and before the like reception bell went, I would have sold them all for double the money. And then I'd have £4 for my lunch money. And worst case, on a bad day, I'd have £3.50 and I'd have a couple of donuts.
But still in the blue, in the black, in the
black.
black.
Yeah, still making money. And then actually my school, like a bunch of kids were shoplifting in the supermarket. So the supermarket banned anyone with a school uniform from going to the supermarket. So my business was closed. So I switched to cigarettes.
At 14?
I think I was about 15 then. And there was this one little shop, little corner shop, that didn't really give a shit. So I would go in and it was back when you could buy a pack of fags for £2. And then I would turn that into like £4 or £5 or something like that and buy my next cigarette. And that's where I started smoking. Funnily enough.
Yeah, now that pack of cigarettes probably cost you 12, 14 quid. I mean, in the US, they're like $16, $20 a pack in some states. It's
Honestly,
crazy.
I remember being in London on a trip back one time, and I think it was like 12 quid for a pack of cigarettes. And I was like, it costs like 12 ringgit here. I was like, what the hell's
Yeah,
going on?
yeah. Well, a huge smoking population in Southeast Asia, particularly Indonesia, right?
Yeah.
But no, it reminds me of my childhood because my parents actually owned a smoke shop when I was
Oh,
a kid,
cool.
like a stationery store.
Yeah.
So we had a walk-in humidor for cigars.
That's why you're an expert. And
Yeah,
can't
well,
get
I wouldn't say
my
expert, but I do enjoy a cigar every now and then. And yeah, we had magazines and candy and greeting cards when those were a thing, comic books,
Greeting
baseball,
cards.
everything.
Yeah, greeting cards. I know what they are.
Yeah, yeah. Remember those?
Yeah.
Hallmark. That was the company that provided all of them.
Yeah. Hallmark.
So yeah, I actually did something very similar. I would take candy from my store, bring it to school.
You were the Dellboy.
I had a shoebox,
No.
and I would keep the candy in the shoebox, and then I would flip the box open, and on the interior of the box, I had written down all the prices of the candy and how much it would cost, and I'd sell it to the kids, and then that was like my weekly allowance.
There's something about, like, I think every kid should do this. Every kid should, like, have some little business.
Oh yeah,
And, you know what? Before that, maybe around the same time, I also did car washing. Me and my buddy, like my best mate, we would go out on a Saturday morning, knocking on people's door. We'll wash your car for £5 or £7 for 2 cars or something like that. We used to do that, and I remember we used to say to each other, "We're going to be rich, you know. We're going to make all this money, and then we're going to buy this thing and that thing." And we were just spending our money on like chocolates and video games and things like that.
yeah. We did something similar, but in the wintertime, we did it with driveways. We shoveled driveways for $10 or $20 a driveway. Me and a couple of friends with shovels hit the neighborhood.
Exactly.
Come back with like $50, $60 and be like, wow, you know, that was a lot of money for
It was.
a 12-year-old or an
Big
11-year-old,
money.
you know?
Yeah. I think also my mother helped out a bit as well, because when I was 13, she made me get a paper round. I think most kids should get some kind of paper round type job or a busboy job or something, right? But I wanted to play this video game which had a subscription. You had to pay to play it every month. And my mom said, "I'm not paying for it. You want to pay it, you get a job." And so I got a paper round.
What game is that?
It's RuneScape.
Wow, okay. Yeah, we didn't have those when I was growing up. You had to buy the cartridge for like $50.
Yeah. This is like back when into the beginning of internet games. You know? So all that kind of got you going, right? Getting you used to, you got to make money for the things that you want. And then I just carried on with that. And then I think when I got to 16, so I was the last year in school that could finish school at 16 and didn't have to go to sixth form, as they call it, and then university, which we would do after 2 years of sixth form.
Okay.
Right, and so my brother at the time was in the army, and he's retired now, but I wanted to follow his footsteps, right? So I was going to join the army. I don't know why. I had this sort of probably romanticized vision of what being in the military would be like, right?
What year was this?
Oh, shit. I don't know.
About
20 years
pre
ago.
9/11 or after 9/11?
After 9/11. Yeah,
After
yeah,
9/11.
Because
Okay.
Joe went, my brother Joe, he went to Afghan, he went to Iraq.
Right. Okay. So he's seen
He did
combat.
tours. Yeah, he's seen combat. Interestingly, won't go down this route because that'll take us another topic, but he got a medal for going to Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, and he went to Northern Ireland on tour and got a medal for going there because it's a rough.
Really? I thought Northern Ireland was fairly peaceful like, for the last 20 years.
Now it is, but it's always a bit rough. So
I know in the 90s
on the
it was
border,
tough, yeah.
on the border, it's the military.
Is it?
It's not
Still?
police. I don't know
To
if
this
it's
day?
still, but
Oh.
back when he was there, because he got a medal to go. But anyway, so I had this romanticized view, and I always looked up to my big brother. He's like 9, 10 years older than me, so you grow up looking up to him. And by that point, my dad had buggered off. He had moved to America when I was like 14, 15, so he moved off. So I didn't have a father figure, right? But I saw more of my brother, so I had that romanticized view. But I also was a lazy bastard, and so to get into the British Army, you've got to be pretty fit.
Yeah.
You've got to be very healthy. You've got to run a lot, right? And so when I finished school, I told my mum, I'm going to join the army. And then I played video games all day long while she went to work. and did nothing, did no running. In fact, I used to time my run 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes before my stepdad would get home, so that I would run, and he would see me running as I ran down the road, and then I would get home. I would have done like 5 minutes.
Okay. Right. So it was a facade.
Exactly. And then I went to the training and I didn't get in.
All right. If you don't mind me backing up a minute and tell me if I go too far.
No, go.
You know, you said your dad buggered off. How old were you? And if you don't mind, you know, just telling me, did they get divorced or what happened there?
Yeah, so my mum and dad were actually never together. I mean,
Okay.
they were obviously together at some point.
Right.
But when I was born, they were not together. So I lived my whole life with them being apart.
Okay.
And then, so that was normal. It was like every 2 weeks I'd be with my dad, and then I'd have 2 holidays, 2 Christmases, you know, the typical stuff.
Right.
But I never went through a divorce separation.
Okay.
It was just that always.
And how was that? Was that okay? There was never any anger?
I mean, there was some frustration, I think more from the step parents. So the when my dad let mom down, my step parents would make a big song and dance about it. You know, oh, he's always, you know.
So there was a
whatever.
step parent on both sides?
Yes, pretty much, but never my dad's side was a problem. It was always my mom's side. So like it would be that I've got to go to see dad, and dad's had to cancel last minute, and then they would get upset, but they would be vocal about it. And I
Right.
loved my dad, and he was my dad.
That'll cause controversy.
And so I would be like, shut up, you know. And I didn't like most of my stepdads growing up because of things like that, you know. So that would probably be where the most conflict came. But really, he left when I was 14, and he moved to the States. And it was very weird. He didn't tell anybody. He just moved. Which is
okay.
weird, which is the fucked up part, right?
Yeah.
So
Was he wanted? Was he fleeing the
well,
country?
turns out not wanted, but he was wanted by debt collectors.
Yeah, that was going to be the next one, right?
He
Not by the,
maximized everything. Flew out to America, bought a beautiful house, but maxed all of his credit and debt capacity in the UK, and he went so far away that they can't collect.
right.
And so my sister, my late sister, she well, I wouldn't say still to this day, but still to this day, she gets knocks on the door asking for money from my dad. Obviously, she doesn't give them any, and she doesn't have to, but she still gets those knocks on the door.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he, as I said, he was a Dellboy. He was a wheeler dealer.
Right. Yeah, you find that with a lot of people out here in Asia too.
Yeah.
Did stuff like that. No, I just ask because you know a lot of entrepreneurs and
Get us going.
a lot of entrepreneurs who don't come from wealthy families come from some sort of a conflict held background, if that makes any sense. You know, you have to go through conflicts, and there's some sort of a pain or chip on the shoulder, you
Definitely.
know, to that makes you want to win, makes you want to be better. Right.
I definitely had a chip on my shoulder for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the best athletes do. I mean, look at like Tom Brady, right? You know, got drafted in the last round, held that his whole career until he had 7 Super Bowl rings, right? I mean, I think a lot of times that fuels people to achieve greatness.
No, it does. It does. I wouldn't say I've achieved greatness just yet, but hopefully soon.
Right.
But yeah, so, and then after, I left school, couldn't get into the army. My mum was like, you're going to college. So college in the UK isn't like it is in America. It's more like sixth form or kind of community college where you're not really getting a degree, you're getting like something else.
Right. Technical school or something like that.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she put me in this course called, it's the Prince's Trust, who's now the king, but the Prince's Trust. And it's, to put it nicely, it's designed for young people that have no idea what they're doing with their life. And they typically come from poorer, underprivileged areas, the people that go to this course. And so when I came into the course, I'm not saying that I'm incredibly intelligent, but I felt like incredibly intelligent being in this group. And I immediately was like, I don't belong here. And that was the biggest kick up the arse I've ever had. And I'm really thankful for my mum. She forced me to go to this course.
Well, anybody will tell you, you never want to be the smartest guy in the room, right? As an entrepreneur, you want to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
Exactly. And but from there, I got my first, kind of kick up the arse, get a job, make some money, do something. And I worked in a fun fair, like operating the teacups, like a little kids' fun fair.
Okay.
It's like a little summer job, right? And they promoted me. I had to open the theme park and close the theme park. It's a tiny little thing. And they were ex-travelers, which means they were gypsies.
Yeah, that's fun.
So they were a wild crew. So that was good fun. And then I went into, I got a job at Sainsbury's, which is a supermarket, as a butcher. So I was a butcher and a fishmonger, just kind of paying for my boozing, paying to go out. But all the while I was working at Sainsbury's, I had another passion. Earlier I kind of alluded to playing video games. Well, I got into esports. And so I managed a team. And later on I started a business, which ended up being my first venture.
But you're basically still in your teens, right, at this point?
Yeah, totally. Like 19, turning 20, kind of.
Yeah, it's funny. As somebody now who's a serial entrepreneur, successful in your own right, no matter what you say. I know you are. And it's funny, you look back at like the odd jobs that you had that got you there. It reminds me of that book Fountainhead, when the two super successful characters, I can't remember their name, but the guy who runs the newspaper and then the head architect are both at the top of their game, and they're talking about these odd jobs that they had prior to gaining success. I remember I worked at a circus.
Oh, wow.
I helped produce the new show for a circus called the Big Apple Circus.
Oh, wow.
So I worked at their training grounds for 3 months during the off season as an associate producer, had my own trailer. But this was, I'm 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
I get to meet people from Mongolia, from Russia, from all over the world, doing all different kinds of acts. As a matter of fact, it actually inspired me to write a children's book.
Oh,
and,
wow.
and I did write a children's book that part of it takes place at the circus. And I published that about 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, I think all these little things, they make us. They're the beginnings, are building blocks, right? There are schools.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so later on, after I worked at the supermarket, I did IT support, and then I did IT sales, which was really the beginning of where I started to make some money.
Okay.
And I can attribute my successes in both of those roles because of how much customer service I was focused on in the supermarket. Because I really enjoyed interacting with all the customers. I didn't enjoy doing the work, but I enjoyed interacting with the customers. And then I did IT support, and I was really good because I built a relationship with all the different customers, which were the workers,
Right.
the IT people, and not the IT people, the people who needed IT, right? And built those relationships, and then I tied that into the sales, built those relationships, and it all came from just the fact that I chatted to the aunts and uncles that would come into the butcher shop and want to have a little chit chat whilst I sliced their meat.
And I can tell you now, being a customer and dealing with service people all the time, it's like you appreciate those employees, those people that interact with you, that don't look at you as a customer and don't look at themselves negatively and see themselves as an equal, that they can have that conversation with you. You appreciate that as a customer, right? So as we're having this conversation now, we're here in Southeast Asia, right? So what inspired you to come out here? Was there something in your high school days that planted the seed?
Yeah, I was very lucky. I was actually at first when I was 15, the secondary school I went to, there was some kind of government scheme where the British government wanted the Chinese government to be our friend and to make the kids like the kids of China and bond. So there was school exchange. And the first year I wanted to go on it and I couldn't. Well, I could, but my mom didn't have much money then and dad had buggered off. And so I didn't want to ask her for the money. It was like 300 quid, which is nothing, by the way, to go on a trip to China £300, like 1,500 ringgit, right?
It's a very good deal from the
Because
UK.
it's supported by, it was like government funded. But the next year I said, Mum, because she found out that I didn't want to ask her, she made it happen, right?
That's good.
Yeah. And so 300 quid, went to China. I'm on the plane, the whatever 18-hour flight, we flew to Hong Kong. And I turned 16. My 16th birthday was a tour of Hong Kong, which was fucking awesome. Yeah. We did everything. You go up on the hill, and they gave us the full tour, and then we go over to Shenzhen, go through the border into China and into Shenzhen, and it's like they're just building this city, which was fascinating.
Yeah.
And then I'm a 16-year-old lad, and there's lots of people stopping me and taking my photo. So obviously my ego starts to be inflated, like I'm like a celebrity, kind of special. Actually, I did something really dumb. I fell in love, like a mini love, with some girl. I remember her name. Her name was Jessica, her English name, and we had arranged the last night of the trip to meet at like downstairs of the dorm that we were staying in, to hang out. Obviously I had boyhood ideas of what hanging out would be, but we planned to hang out. And as I was heading down, my teacher saw me. I was like, what are you doing? You gotta go to bed. We've got to get up at 5 a.m. to get our flight. And I'm like, oh no, I've got to go. And he didn't let me. And I was pissed. And I'm like arguing with these, not arguing, but complaining to these two other school kids. And I'm just like, oh, this teacher, and I just go bang, like that. And it turns out there was a break the glass hose pipe just there. And it shatters and cuts open my arm. Like so around here, just completely cuts open it. And that was then a few hours journey to a hospital in Shenzhen.
Oh boy.
Which was a bit dumb. Yeah.
I can't imagine, because I was in Shenzhen around the same time as you. I think this was like 06 or something, 05.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like a rubble field.
Pretty
It was
much.
complete just rubble. And to see what it is today is just unbelievable.
It's incredible. And when I was there, they were literally building the city.
Yeah.
And you see all this construction, you're like, this is growth. Which was, other than the love story, that was another reason why I was like really attracted to coming out to Asia eventually, was that I saw there was huge amounts of growth happening. And I mean, you don't see that from where I'm from. England is this old, it's old. It's had its day in the sun. It's no longer really developing. It's kind of stagnated for the average person to grow. And you then look at a city like Shenzhen, which is like, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
It was a tiny little fishing village. And then it was becoming this giant, or what it is now, the Silicon Valley of Asia.
Right. You've got all these huge startups coming out of Shenzhen, Guangzhou, right? Alibaba, I think, Pinduoduo.
Incredible tech comes out of Shenzhen. And, you just can't compete with that in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, well, the UK is changing in its own right as we speak now. And,
Big time.
being a former UK resident, how does...
Former, definitely, for the tax man.
What do you see about... How does... What do you,
How do I feel about the UK?
How do you feel about the UK and being out here? I think there's a lot of opportunity out here.
Well, as I said, I feel like there's nothing really happening in the UK. It's all nepotism. Like, you've got to have gone to a good school and know the good guys and to really get an opportunity. And don't get me wrong, there are people that are able to find themselves and create something in the UK, but it's very few and far between. You overtax anyone who makes any money. So we have the biggest exodus of millionaires in the world. Like, anyone who makes it, they leave, right? And that just says everything you need to know.
And then they come back and get a second home.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Asia, and when I came out here, when I got to Malaysia, it was 7 years ago. And at the time, Malaysia was the 7th fastest growing economy in the world. And then you had the Philippines and Indonesia and Thailand and Vietnam and all these sort of great growing countries, or building countries, right? They were trying to change their economies. And that's just, when there's so much development and building happening and investment coming into these countries, opportunity is abundance. And I like to talk about Malaysia in the sense that, obviously you're American, so the American dream. I think the American dream is real in Malaysia or in Southeast Asia, in the sense that if you work hard and maybe you work a little harder than the average person, a little smarter, you're going to make it. You're going to be able to do something. You just have to take the risk, and that's building something.
Yeah, everybody who comes to visit me here from the States and from Europe, they're astounded by how many cranes there are, how much building is happening, right? And frankly, Malaysia in particular, I think, has a branding problem. Thailand is branded as this tourist haven. Singapore is branded as a finance hub.
Yep.
Now they've kind of co-opted Malaysian food culture as well, which was a genius move on their part and a miss on Malaysia's part. And Singapore has essentially co-opted Malaysian food and said it's theirs. And they've branded themselves as a food hub. And Malaysia kind of gets stuck in the middle. And the reason is because I find it to be always very neutral in a sense. They never try to go too hard left, too hard right. And that's not a bad thing. But to its own detriment, it's very rojak is what they say here. It's very mixed, right? Which is great. I think that's probably one of the best things about the country is that it's a mixed culture of different, Chinese, Indian, Malay, expats, everybody mixed together. It's as close as you can get to the United States, kind of, but with an Asian sense about it. You see, it's the melting pot of Asia. But yeah, they kind of missed the road on branding because they're just a little bit of everything. Malaysia's got the best infrastructure in the region.
Yeah.
It's got good finance, it's got great food, it's got good tourism beaches, but it just doesn't hone in on anything. It's more of a shotgun approach rather than a laser approach. Which is
master of none, right?
We're talking about Malaysia and Southeast Asia.
Average master of none.
Yes, but you being here and why you're, how you ended up in Malaysia.
Well, obviously I had a great impression from Shenzhen, and I'd actually for years wanted to come out here, and I'd been applying for jobs, not specifically to Malaysia, but all kind of across Asia, mostly multinational companies. But I didn't have a degree, so no one would hire me, no one would give me an offer. And then when I was in the UK, I'm from a place called Leamington Spa, and Warwick University's there, which is quite a top uni, and I met a girl who, the typical story of coming to Asia, right? I met a girl, she was Malaysian. Actually, I didn't even know Malaysia existed until I met her. Like, I didn't know Malaysia existed.
Hence the branding problem.
Exactly. And I knew Singapore, right? I knew Thailand, knew Philippines, never heard of Malaysia. So we start going out, and she finishes university, has to come back to Malaysia. So we're in like this long distance relationship. And I immediately am like, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to move there. And so I quit my job. I was earning really good money. I was selling computer technology across the UK. I just quit my job and just came out here, and I just applied, I think for like 1,000 jobs. And one company gave me a job offer. They're called Marcus Evans. They're some event selling company. And they paid me 2,500 ringgit a month.
Wow.
Which was a huge salary decrease. It was costing me money to be here, basically.
It's not an expat package.
No, it's not. No, I did not come on an expat package. But I just wanted to be in Asia. It wasn't about the girl. The girl was a catalyst. And actually that was proven because I was here for 2 months and we broke up. And I never left, right? And she was my catalyst. Malaysia was just because she was here. And I was like, once I'm there, I'll figure something out. I'll work something out. Quit my job 3 weeks in.
Were you surprised when you got here at what Malaysia was as opposed to what you had in your mind about it?
Yeah, I was thinking Shenzhen back in the day when I was there. I thought it would be very different. I thought no one would speak English. Or like, I knew that some people would speak English, but I didn't think it would be the way it is. Whereas KL is like, everybody speaks English.
Well, it's an ex-British colony.
Well,
probably should have known that.
Well, I didn't know that later on. I remember when I learned what Malaysia was, and they said, yeah, we used to be owned by England. We're in the Commonwealth. I was like, oh, cool. I had no fucking idea. We don't learn about it. And to be fair, I love history, and to be fair, in the UK, in schools, they don't really teach you too much about the Empire days.
Really?
No, not in school. We learn about Henry VIII and things like that.
That is
World War
interesting.
One, World War Two.
Well, that kind of goes along
With
with
the
their
heroes.
with their policies that they're putting in place now. They're trying to basically erase their entire colonial past, and they're pretending it didn't exist.
Yeah. And then there are some people in the country that are pretending it never ended. It's
Right.
like a weird, bizarre. You've got like the right wing are like, we're still British, colonial, Commonwealth, rah. And then the other side is like, oh no, we're sorry for doing all of those things. It's like, guys, you're both living in weird worlds, like, you know?
Fantasy land.
You're all living in absolute fantasy land. And the UK's, because we're kind of slightly on that topic, another reason why I left, and beyond, you know, this me really wanting to be out here for many years and then having that catalyst event, was the UK had changed. Brexit had happened, which completely divided the country. Like, the country was very, very different. And I just didn't see a future, you know? And it's just getting worse and worse over there. Everyone's miserable.
Certainly seems that way from the internet, but as I've learned, the internet and the real world are two totally different places. So hard to judge until you're actually there. Really,
You're not far off. Every time I go back, I'm always texting my business partner. I'm like, I can't wait to come home to Malaysia. I hate going back to the UK. I don't mind it at the beginning. Like, I miss the cold. So I go back, I'm cold for an hour, and then like, okay, I don't miss this anymore. I miss my friends. Of course, I still enjoy hanging out with them, but all they do is complain and moan about life. You know, you come out here, and maybe it's just the network I have, but people are wanting to do things and create things and have a good time. I mean, being an expat, obviously, expat community has a lot of fun, but even locals that I hang out with, they're all thinking about what we're going to do next,
Yeah.
There's an opportunity. In the UK, it's like, oh, the government sucks. Immigration sucks. People suck. It's just, that's all they talk about.
Now, I don't know your friends, and I don't want to judge your friends, but but you know what it reminds me of? You know, I've seen the entire spectrum of socioeconomic society from when I was a kid, and my parents were divorced, and we were quite poor, and what comes with not having money, and what comes with not being able to have the resources at your disposal is a lot of negativity. I find in the lower socioeconomic classes, there's a lot of negativity.
Very true.
And as you climb that ladder, you start to see hopefulness. And then by the time you reach the total top of the ladder, the ruling class of society, it's just positivity. What can I do? Because you're almost beyond hopefulness because you've already made it. It's just, what can I do now? What's more? But it's always the positive side of things, right? And I've even caught myself like getting into the negative every once in a while, being around this group of people and realizing that I've kind of killed the vibe for a second, you know? So I do find there to be a correlation between positivity and wealth building and wealth creation and just seeing the positive side of things, you know? I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be like that, right? Like you always think, what is the solution? What is the solution? Let's find out the solution. How do we fix this? Exactly. If you get negative, you start a death spiral. But once you get that solution, it's like, show me the next problem. Okay, let's fix it.
Exactly. And I mean, I coach founders in their kind of earlier stages, and this is something I'm always talking to them about, because you're gonna hit points where you hit a roadblock or a wall or shit's going wrong. I still remember, I think I was 6 to 9 months into my first venture, like here in Malaysia, which was called B Corp, which was a lead generation company that later became my main company, Nectar. And my customers, we weren't performing for my customers, so we were doing a shit job. They weren't paying us on time. So we were doing a shit job. Our customers weren't paying us on time. I wasn't getting paid myself. This was the early days, right? And I didn't have any money in the bank to pay the upcoming salary. And I remember I was in bed. Yes, I would love one.
That's tough.
Yeah, I was in bed, couldn't fucking sleep, because I didn't care that I wasn't making money. I had money.
Right.
I cared that my staff making $3,000 or $4,000 a month, I wasn't going to be able to pay them, and this would impact them greatly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to pay their rent, you know. So I was up all night, and I remember I said to my partner at the time, cheers.
Cheers.
I said to her, why the hell am I doing this? I'm earning nothing, and I've been earning nothing for quite some time. I can't afford to pay myself salaries. We're not performing. This is just shit. Why the hell am I putting myself through this? I remember going through that, and that's a dangerous question to ask yourself. I think it's an important question that everyone will eventually ask themselves who start a business, but it's a dangerous one because you can go the wrong way.
I think that's the turning point. That's where a lot of
Yeah.
people turn back.
Yeah.
Because every entrepreneur goes through it, right? I remember going through it.
Yeah, it's
having
hard.
heart palpitations.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep at night.
Yeah. I think Elon Musk said it, right? Being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. It's fucking hard.
Yeah.
80% of every business started will fail in the first 5 years. And that 20% that survive, 80% of that will fail in the second 5 years. You have such a small percentage chance of winning. And so it's scary, it's hard, it's difficult. And most of the time it's when you go through the tough times, that's when you start to give up. And if you start to give up, you will absolutely fail. There's no turning back. As soon as in your mind you go, we're not going to be able to make it. You know, and back then I remember I had a business coach of my own, and I remember the next day after feeling that way, I had a session with him, and I was like, mate, why am I doing this? This is really shit. And he did two things. The first thing is he didn't even respond to why am I doing this. He just looked at the problem of we ain't got any money in the bank, and he made me work backwards. I was like, all right, how many customers do you need to sign this month? 2. How many people do you need to meet? I was like, 5. How many people do you need to contact to get 5 meetings? I was like, 30. How long is it going to take you to contact 30 people? A couple of hours. Shut up and get on with it, right? And then I was like, oh, okay, shit, we can deal with this. And then he said, so now, why did you decide to do this? Why did you get in? Why the hell are you putting yourself through this? Why did you start in the first place? And then I told him, it's like, yes, so stop complaining and do the work. Best piece of advice I ever got.
Yeah. It's ultimately, running a business ultimately comes down to solving problems.
Yeah.
And I feel that most people who, when you get inundated with problems and you start to feel overwhelmed, that's when those feelings of negativity come, right? You start to feel a little helpless.
Yeah.
Because the fact is, it's hard to be an entrepreneur. And when you're an employee, it's easy to be an employee because you've got that security and it's not your business and there's no responsibility.
Salary's coming in your bank every month.
Exactly.
Don't worry about it. You know, do the job, coast if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different world. You know. Look, it's not for everybody to start a business. It's really not. It's not for the faint-hearted. I think you've got to be a little crazy, to be honest. You've got to put yourself through huge pain.
You got to be a risk taker.
You're big time.
Yeah.
It's far more riskier than most things.
Absolutely. So you've got your business coaching thing going on now.
Yeah.
And you also have your group of companies, Nectar. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Because I know you have I know a couple, but you have a few companies. So just give me the gamut.
So well, the multiple companies happened a bit later. I started B Corp, which actually came from COVID. That's when I first really quit my job and stopped doing side hustles.
Okay.
I started B Corp. I persuaded a friend of mine who had a small business to pay me £400 to do lead generation for him for a month. And from that 400, like that campaign I did, he got one client worth $100,000. So he was incredibly happy. And so we did more with him, and then he told his friends about it, and I got more customers, and then I built a company, and we got up to like 50 odd kind of people. But I was incredibly lonely.
Right.
Because I went from being someone in the company that's kind of one of the lads, having a good time, having a laugh, you know. I was just I was a top performer in terms of sales, but I was a solo contributor. Then I was managing people, and I had managers that I was managing, and I was dealing with finance, and I was dealing with shit that I've never done before, and I was dealing with problems I'd never dealt with before, to the point where like it was like stupid HR issues, you know. And then I decided to merge my company with a digital marketing agency. So we were like a sales agency.
Okay.
And I merged it with a lady called Shook. And me and Shook she had a business for some time, and we were doing work together. Like, I had a contract that I needed some marketing work for, and I would outsource to her. And we became friends. And then we like flirted with the idea of merging our companies for like a year. I was like, oh, you just come work for me, you know, and she was like, you just come work, you know, that kind of stuff. And then we said, you know what, shall we just meet and talk about this? And when we met, it was like a foregone conclusion. It wasn't, should we talk about it? It was, how do we do it?
Right.
You know? 3 months later, we merged our companies. So it was a real rapid change. And then we scaled. We took on, 2 months after we merged, I closed a $600,000 US deal with Lenovo, right? Big contract, nightmare. I'll tell you about that later.
Okay.
Don't work with Lenovo. Well, I shouldn't say that. We're on camera.
Well, we can cut that out.
But yeah, so then, you know, we were like making loads of money.
Okay.
We were very happy, you know. And from that success, other companies started coming up. Shook's first business was a software development agency. So we launched another one called Mertech, which is, it's, you know, people who are building kind of complex financial service kind of products, and they need a lot of back-end infrastructure built. We built that. Then we built Gency, which we were trying to change the way you manage an agency business. And kind of we built a software that enables you to have like one platform to manage your agency, your employees, your customers, your projects, everything, one spot, which we got venture funded by Mr. Brockland.
Oh, okay. Mutual friend of ours.
Yes, yeah. So Kevin invested, and we built that. Then we started another company called Sales Envoy, which we're trying to do an AI sales rep.
Okay.
That's still a work in progress.
I still think it's a great idea because it's relentless. It won't take no for an answer.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I was listening to a cold call the other day that it was doing, and it didn't give up. The guy was like, just send me an email. And it was like, okay, I'll send you an email. Where should I send it to? Info at, and he was like, sorry, what's your email? No, just send it to info. But I should send it to you. Okay, fine, Ben at.
Really? You can
Yeah.
figure that out?
That's
amazing.
It did not give in. It was freaking wild. And people don't notice that they're talking to it.
That's unbelievable. And is it using like 11 Labs? Or
11 Labs is the agent.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have to build a bunch of other stuff to make it all work and
Right,
things.
right.
But, yeah, 11 Labs is the calling.
I had a meeting with them this morning, actually.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so they're 11 Labs are a cool app. But so we built these companies, but everything's changed within those organizations because AI has kind of changed the game.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, so did AI cause you to kind of pivot your company?
Yeah, I had no choice. All of them, really.
Right.
It all started a couple of years ago. I think it was GPT-3, around about that time. Hadn't been out that long. And Sequoia Capital, someone who works in their analyst team, relatively senior but not one of the top players, dropped me a message on LinkedIn asking me for a meeting. I was like, Sequoia Capital, what do they want? Are they going to acquire us? Like, what's going on? Let's have a look. So I show up to the meeting and they basically said, we think ChatGPT and technology like it is going to make service businesses like Nectar be super scalable as SaaS companies. What are you guys doing about it? And I just made up a load of bollocks of what we were doing about it to sound like we actually were doing something, but we weren't doing anything.
Right.
We were just running the business. We were excited by ChatGPT and all of us were using it, but it wasn't a day-to-day part of the business. And that call, I wouldn't say scared the shit out of me, but it scared me and made me really excited all at the same time. I was thinking, shit, we're fucked if we don't change, and also, wow, we're going to do something really different. Let's tackle this. And then that basically started my 2-year kind of journey of transforming the company. Transforming it into essentially an AI company.
It's crazy that, my first experience with ChatGPT was January 2023 when GPT-3 came out. And to think that it's only been 2+ years and now it is an integral part of my life. I use AI on a daily basis. I'm training my kids on how to use AI.
Yeah, need to. No choice.
And it feels like it's been here a lot longer. And not only that, it's changing at such a rapid pace and improving so quickly. Before we get into that, because there's a lot that we can go down with that. I want to know,
quickly.
How are you guys using AI in terms of your business, and how do you, how are you benefiting other companies with AI?
Yeah. So at our height, the company had about 50 to 60 headcount. And headcount is expensive. Not just expensive, but has its issues. You've got middle managers, you've got team leaders, you've got HR issues, you've got drama, all of the nonsense that comes with teams. And after this meeting with Sequoia Capital, I was like, okay, let's start looking. And the immediate obvious options was content creation, like copywriting. Because we had the whole marketing department that did that as a service. I was like, okay, well, we've got to get fucking quicker and better. So came in there. Then it was ideation. So a lot of ideas started to come in. And then we started embedding it into every part of the service we do. So most of what we're doing is lead generation in the main business. And so we were looking at, okay, well, we're doing B2B sales. We have 3 channels that we're using: email, LinkedIn, and cold calling. Those are the primary 3 channels. So email, I can create emails with ChatGPT. Great. So now we back in the beginning, we had what you call an email sequence, where you have like 5 emails you pre-write and they get sent out in over 20, 30 days, whatever you want to do. So we had automated that with pure AI. Nobody was writing and spending hours coming up with content and things like that. Then we did the same with LinkedIn. And then we could finally automate LinkedIn. Now I've got AI that will log into the LinkedIn account, connect with you on LinkedIn, send you a message, etc.
That's amazing.
After that, we got research, because it all got connected to the internet. So now that we have AI that will research who you are, what you're interested in, what your business does, etc. And then it will write an email specifically for you and create relevance in that email to what we're selling. And then it does that on LinkedIn as well. Those are quick steps. Now we didn't need as many people.
So you're utilizing agents then, as well as ChatGPT,
Eventually
just to create the
became
content?
agents.
Okay.
Yeah, at first it was like you would use these tools to create the content or do the research and plug in and play. Now you've got agents that just do the whole thing.
And you're creating these agents?
Well, we're creating them, but not creating them is the best way to describe it. Well, it's not even a good way to describe it.
You're customizing them.
Yeah, so we've converted from sort of an outsourcing agency into like an IT consultancy / system integrator / agency. So typically how a meeting will go with a customer now will be like, what's your problem? And it's always related to revenue because we're in the revenue generating space. What's your problem? And they'll be like lead generation, closing leads, quality of leads, upselling, blah, 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 blah. We would then go, okay, well, what tools do you use? What tech? What's the team look like? Da, da, da. Then we would come up with an idea of how we would do it. They say yes, then we actually implement that idea where we use these agents and we integrate it all together into their tech stack and so on. And then we're the agency in the sense that we're now going to deliver. And if it's not working, we're going to change the agents, we're going to change the infrastructure. And so that's kind of how we evolve from going, we're going to do cold calling for you, to we're going to build infrastructure that's going to deliver you revenue. And that was because of the Sequoia Capital meeting.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, that's what these big companies are looking for. Really what they're looking for is ROI, right? Like if they're going to hire you, they want to know what's the net benefit down the line, especially when it comes to bottom line in terms of revenue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was this, I remember watching the Diary of a CEO podcast, and I forget who they had on it. But Stephen was saying something on the podcast where he was talking about, let's say you started a window cleaning business, and you'll spend years learning how to do it. So if you look at my life, I spent when I left the IT support world, I entered sales, and I became, I don't want to toot my own horn, but a master in sales. I'm very good at kind of the entire end-to-end process. So I built a business that sells sales, right? And as that kind of evolved, you're selling to Dorothy's at the beginning, small house who owns 4 or 5 windows, the window cleaner. I'm selling to small micro businesses at the beginning. And then I realized that the same skill, the same equipment, the same team could be used to sell to Google, who has 10,000 windows. One contract, lots more money, higher margin, easier to manage. And as soon as we made that shift, we could then do these infrastructure projects where they would even pay to experiment. You know, we just finished a deal that we're working on. It's like $40,000 a month to experiment.
That's pretty cool. That gives you a chance to be creative too.
Exactly. They go, this is our problem. We want to use AI to do it. And every CEO on the planet right now is asking its management team, what are we doing with AI? And most of the management team in big MNCs have no idea, right? And they're asking their CTO, who comes from a very traditional background, you know. And so what do? They go to consultants. And so I think it's a massive opportunity for consultants over the next 5 years to come in and come up with these ideas, and that's kind of what we tapped into.
Yeah, so instead of building an in-house AI department, they're hiring a company like you.
Yeah, I mean, some companies are building it in-house.
Yeah.
Most of the time when you build a team in-house, especially in emerging technology, you're going to spend a lot of money, it's not going to work out unless you come from that kind of background. There's someone like Google and the tech companies, they can do that. But like, I don't know, if you're like just a standard logistics company or you know, you're a traditional business that have been around for 50 plus years.
Yeah.
You're not going to attract good talent. You're not you're not going to know how to manage the talent. It's just it's a different ballgame. It will take a long time to.
Especially here, I feel there's a lot more traditional businesses in Asia.
Yeah.
With old school values, right? Marketing isn't the biggest thing here.
No.
It never has been, right?
No.
A lot of family businesses here, a lot of family-owned businesses here.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it were me, you know, I'm not really in the business anymore as much, but if I were, I'd be training all my employees on AI. I'd want someone to come in and train my employees on AI. Like train them how to use it so that they can become more efficient, so they can 2, 3, 4x their output.
Yeah. So I didn't go the training route where we hire some experts and things like that. I went the culture route. You know, so we created the behaviors for change. So the 2 real important things I did. Firstly, I introduced the Kaizen method. Be familiar?
Well, I know it's Japanese.
Thumbs up.
That's about as far as my knowledge goes on the Kaizen
I mean,
method.
you can read about it, but
Is that the one that Toyota uses?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's all about continuous improvement. And how
Right.
do you come up with continuous improvement? You need
Right.
ideas. So the first step is I brought in a KPI for the entire company. You have to come up with one idea a month. That was the beginning. And the idea can't be, so a lot of time you get a suggestion box. You remember the old suggestion boxes that people would have in companies? And
Yeah.
they grow dust and they're just full of complaints. 90% of it's bollocks and 90% of it's ignored.
Right.
Well, actually 100% of it's ignored. Now the Kaizen method is you can't complain. You have to give me an idea. That idea has to have some form of business impact in mind. And if we like it, you're implementing it. You as the individual came up with the idea. So if you just complain, you're not going to, how are you going to implement your own complaint?
Okay.
Right? So it's like changes that behavior, and culture is just behaviors. It's not values written on the wall, it's behaviors. And so once we added that, things changed dramatically. So at first the ideas from people were very quality of life, standard, right? And slowly they became more and more, okay, we could use this thing, we could use that. We got a podcast as well, as you know, of being a guest on it. And now we're using AI for tons of content creation around it. You know, all the topics we come up with, we have a whole agent we've built that researches the guests, comes up with a plan for what we should talk about, and gives me, the host, 4 things to talk to them about, which I then tell them, I'm going to talk to you about these 4 things, right? We've like all these kinds of ideas have come, and it actually all started with some, you know, I went to a town hall, I said, hey, we're doing this, give me your ideas, and someone said, I want to decorate the office, because our office was kind of a bit plain, we were too busy to deal with it. And so we decorated the office, and they saw change, and then they're like, change is possible, come up with ideas. Then one person came up with an innovation lab, which is just a wall which has been painted with special black chalk paint, and people write ideas of how we can improve the business,
That's cool.
right? Then with the Kaizen method, we then said, okay, we want a culture of failure. And what I mean by that is we are not afraid to fail. So if you have an idea and it fails, no one's going to get in trouble, so long as we write down why we failed,
Yeah.
right, and learn from it. And all of that just helped the whole company just transform.
Right.
And so I didn't hire anybody in to go, come in and tell us how to do AI. I nearly did. I had a guy come in who was a consultant, and he gave me a pitch, and I was like, this is stupid. And so I just ignored it. And I was like, I'm just going to figure this out ourselves. And yeah, so that kind of transformed the business, basically just making everyone think, how do we get better? How do we improve? And it's okay to fail.
Yeah. I mean, you don't fail, right? You either learn or you win.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
There is no failure. There's no losing. We're back after a minor technical difficulty.
Of course.
These things happen.
Of course.
I think we were talking about how super wealthy people can control and
The narrative.
sway the narrative. And that's what it's all about, narratives. I mean, that is a word that I think came to light through Hollywood and like Hollywood films, talking about who's controlling the narrative, especially in like those Bourne movies, you know, the Bourne Identity and all that. Oh, we're losing the narrative. What's the narrative, right? And now you hear it all the time. What's the narrative? And, you know, somebody like Google is trying to sway Kamala Harris voters. Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44.2 billion. Spent extra $2 billion just to get that, 200 mil to get that 420. And they can do it. So yeah, but what we're really talking about is how the economy is starting to shift.
I have some thoughts about this shit.
Yeah, well, today he released a statement saying that movies made overseas are going to be tariffed 100% in the United States. But it seemed to be a bombastic statement, as Trump is known for, because there weren't really any details. And how do you determine what is a foreign movie and what is an American-made movie? Because a lot of American production companies shoot overseas.
Yeah.
and then bring it back to the United States.
I think there has been a lot of movies being made in countries purely for the tax benefits and things like that, not necessarily the storytelling, right? I think one was like Thor 2, when it was in London, for no particular reason. The American scientist is now in London, right? So there's a lot of, because we did a bunch of tax breaks and things for movie makers to come and bring their movies to the UK, and many countries do that. So there is an element of that. He wants to bring those roles and movies back, but
there's a huge amount of it. I mean, a lot of films get shot in Canada because Canada's got a subsidy.
Yeah.
Right? Malaysia has a subsidy.
The American Beast Games was shot in Canada.
Was it?
It was all shot in Canada. Beast Games by Mr. Beast.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, these countries, a lot of films are shot in Eastern Europe because of the subsidies. There's huge subsidies. In fact, frankly, if we're going to speak frankly about this, I think it's Hollywood's fault, because Hollywood has gotten so regulated the same way that the U.S. government has gotten regulated, where it's been layered and layered, and unions, and everybody has to get paid X amount of money. It's become so bureaucratic that it's hardly affordable to be able to make a movie in the United States. I mean,
and it's a high risk business, so you've got to be able to get the reward, and if you're not getting the reward because you're taxed to high heaven, why are you going to take the risk?
Yeah, and digitization and computers and special effects and VFX were supposed to decrease the cost of movie making, but in fact, the cost of movie making has done nothing but gone up. I mean, a James Cameron film or a Marvel film, these films are $300 million budgets. It's ridiculous. You go back to the 90s, and we didn't have this big CGI showy, but we had real stories, and real people were able to make films for $5 million, $10 million.
Well, you look at how much, I can't remember how much The Godfather was made for, which is it's one of the greats, right? But it was not $300 million.
Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. The 90s were the renaissance of independent filmmaking.
Yeah.
And we got some of the best films during that period of time because it was real people, real stories that people can relate to.
Now it's theme park movies, as Scorsese would say. But let me circle back to the tariffs for a second, because you're the movie expert. I'm not. But I've been thinking a lot about these tariffs, because I also wanted Trump to win for one reason only. The US dollar was going to go up, and I charge everybody in US dollar. So that was going to make me happy. And it made me happy. It's coming back down, by the way, which is not making me happy, which is not a good sign.
It is indeed.
But so these tariffs, basically, I'm not going to say Trump, but America are saying F you to everybody. They're going, you know what, screw you all. You've been milking our teat for too long. Go away. But it's doing it in such a way that it's basically alienating everybody. And this is why China will win. I mean, we're in Malaysia. China just did a tour. Beijing doesn't come to you, you come to Beijing. That's always been the message. Beijing came out here because you know what they saw? A power vacuum.
Yeah.
America have been the global superpower, the ruling class of the world, and they've basically just gone, okay, we don't want it anymore. Here you go, China.
And I have to say, I've never seen such strong rhetoric by the Malaysian government towards another nation, where Anwar said, "We stand with China." And then there was a article in the Star that was essentially Chinese propaganda talking about how great China is. I have never seen an article for them talk about the US or the UK or anybody like that in such a manner in my life. So this was very strong stance, I think, by Anwar and his government on how strong of a relationship he wants with China. Now, we know that China wants to build a lot of infrastructure in Malaysia. And let me tell you, if that global war, if that Asian war ever comes, a lot of that infrastructure that China has built here is going to double its military bases. Okay, if they own a port on the East Coast, that's going to be a base. Yeah, I mean, I remember speaking with a defense expert who said when China started buying and building these ports on the East Coast, the first thing they did was widen the highways leading towards these ports so that they could double as runways for when planes can land in case of emergency. Now, that's a very big possibility. I mean, and let's face it, Malaysia does reside on the South China Sea. And
It's
at the same...
it's always been an incredibly strategic position. The Malacca Strait,
Yeah.
right? The busiest trade route in the world. You've also got a lot of natural resources. There is only upside for China.
But the thing is, at the same time, China is at conflict with Malaysia for the Spratly Islands and for those oil and gas reserves that are off the coast of Sarawak and Sabah. So I hope that Anwar can make some kind of a negotiation with Xi to kind of retain some of those rights.
I think it will go the way the UK went. We used to have a saying in the UK that the Prime Minister's head is so far up the arse of the American president that we just lick your ass, we do what you say. You want to go to Iraq? We're coming.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
that was Tony Blair.
Tony Blair, and then we had a joke. There was a comedian who said a joke. So Gordon Brown was the replacement of Tony Blair when he resigned. Gordon Brown's so far up Bush's arse that he can see where Tony Blair used to be. Something like that, right? But we have just basically been ponying up, doing what we're told. We were exactly what we don't want Malaysia and other countries to be, but to America.
Funny, you know, now that we're talking about UK and we were talking about history before, these tariffs, they almost remind me a little bit of the UK around the 1940s, towards the end of World War II, where they started abandoning their colonies in the Japanese took over Malaysia.
Don't
Right?
call it abandoning. I feel like we were kicked out by the Japanese.
All right, so well, you lost whatever it is. There is a little bit of a feeling there that America is kind of isolating itself to a point where,
This is what dying empires
we're fighting everybody. But hope. Look, the fact is, he had to do something because he needs to bring the debt down. The debt in the United States is so high that the interest payments are going to be more than $1 trillion a year or something like that.
Look, I don't disagree.
And he's got to do something to bring revenue to the country and bring that debt down.
Yeah. But he's just charging his own people.
What it's going to be, I mean, is this going to work? Hopefully it won't last. I mean, I have a theory that they kind of use Argentina as a sounding board because Argentina cut out a ton of ministries the same way Doge did, to cut out the whole woke movement and just cut out bureaucracy. And it worked out very well for Argentina. In fact, Argentina, I think now is at a budget surplus.
But
the first one in
Argentina,
years.
The thing is, America isn't unlike anywhere in the world. It's just, Argentina is a very different part of the planet.
Yeah, Argentina doesn't have a military-industrial complex. It
Doesn't have the same kind of educational system, doesn't have the same kind of society and
the consumerism, it doesn't have the needs that America has.
Yeah.
I mean, look, let's face it. Yes,
America, you need China. You want China. China's your factory.
China
You
is
don't
our
want
factory.
the shit that comes with all that manufacturing.
But a lot of it's PR because if you look at the tariffs, there's no tariffs on iPhones, there's no tariffs on laptops, there's no tariffs on technology coming out of
It's
China.
'cause
So it's a lot of
Apple,
PR. Check that out, Fahad.
But I was just reading iPhones are fucked.
Tech products coming out of China, for the most part, are not taxed.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't think iPhones are
I
taxed.
read about the iPhone being caught, I read that
No, he walked that back. I
He
think he
did?
walked that back last month.
Tim Cook called him up and was like, can you
Probably.
fuck off?
Zero tariffs on many consumer electronics right now, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see zero tariffs
So
on many. So it's a lot of a
basically, it's the tech
PR. It's a PR
companies.
thing. Yeah.
But I loved what China said on the CNBC or CNN or Fox News. I don't know what fucking channel it was, but the interviewer was like, "Are you worried about these tariffs? Are you not worried?" It's like, "No, we're not worried. We've been here 5,000 years, and we're going to be another 5,000 years. America have been 250 years. Why are we worried? It's a problem. It's not a massive problem." And she was like, "Yeah, but 15% of your economy comes from your trade with America." And it's like, so what? We've been here before America. We're still going to be here. And I loved that attitude.
Yeah.
But it's a scary attitude.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like going back. Yeah, if you look at if you look at the human existence, and you look at the graph, China has kind of been at the top of the heap for a long time, but they were always isolated. They
And
never really expanded outside of China, but they were always a huge empire for hundreds of years.
Oh, yeah.
And then they had the Opium Wars, the Opium Downfall by the UK in the 1800s, right? Early 1900s, something like that.
Yeah.
And that kind of brought them down. And then World War II, and then Mao took over, and there was a bit of starvation. But since Mao, they've been nothing but gone up.
Yeah, and these tariffs are accelerating the power, power grabbing that they're doing across the world.
Yeah.
They're just because America is going into isolationism.
Yeah.
And that's great for America, and it will be for a short period of time. It's going to be terrible for the world, because it might not be, but the flashpoints are going to be triggered, and it goes back to AI, where America are going to be so focused on their American problems, which is good because you should be focusing on your own problems. Many Americans are going to lose their jobs to AI.
Yeah.
Way quicker than here, because here it's still really cheap. Labor is still cheap, so you don't spend huge amounts of money trying to make AI work. In the US, labor's fucking expensive, so you're going to spend money.
Right, this is
to
now,
make it
but
work.
if we start talking about phase 2 of AI and we talk about robotics in the real world, the only way America can catch up is if we can transfer manufacturing back to the United States by utilizing robotics. That could be an absolutely huge business opportunity in the United States to start building dark factories run by robots at low cost and selling it to the American consumer.
I agree and disagree. I think you're right in some respect, but I don't think you're never going to own the whole supply chain.
That's true.
You got
China has the raw materials they have.
And that's why we have globalization, because you've got supply chains all across the world for various different products, right? And you don't want to bring all that. How are you going to do that in America? You can't build an iPhone in America. You don't have the supply chain, you don't have the resources to build the amount of iPhones you need to ship to the world. And I don't think that's a big win for America.
Well, you don't need to build enough to ship to the world. You just need to build enough to ship to the United States.
Yeah, but you guys make a lot of money from the world. Like Google and Facebook and Apple and all these companies, they make a lot of money in US, and US is one of their largest markets, but they make more money from the rest of the world.
Yeah, but Google and Facebook are not being affected by the tariffs at all.
Well, it's because they have the phone call. They just call them up and go, hey, fuck off.
Well, because they don't really have any physical products. They're selling services to the rest of the world, which is where I think Trump made a mistake in terms of the tariffs.
Which
right?
is
And
another
the
taxing
Singaporean Prime Minister made a very, very good point when he said, you look at the tariffs and you're charging tariffs on imports and exports, but yet the United States is the largest exporter of services in the entire world, right? You look at Microsoft, right? Every computer's got Excel on it, right? Facebook, Google, everyone's buying ads from those service companies. You see,
and there's no tax.
And there's no taxation. There's no tariffs on. There is tax, but there's no tariffs on.
And this is what's going to piss off more people. So I was watching this really interesting debate where you've got one guy who's saying the path to better life is entrepreneurship, which I completely agree with. Yeah. But also there's a huge failure rate, so it's very difficult. And then the other guy is the path to improving our economy is tax the rich from their unrealized gains. Tax them within that, because if you're able to borrow and buy things from that, you should be taxed as well. Yeah. And so you've got these two opposing views. And one thing they could all agree on was that you should pay tax there should be a better system, but you should be paying like a VAT, a sales tax.
Yeah.
Someone like Apple,
I think that there should be a sales
Apple
tax.
should not be able to sell you an iPhone in England and then not pay any corporate tax because actually it was in Ireland. They have the stock in England,
right?
And they sold it to you in a store in England. They should pay tax in England, but they're not. They're in Ireland and they're not paying any tax.
No,
and so one thing that the entrepreneur guy would agree with the tax guy, who was just a prick, by the way,
of course,
was that these companies should not have all these loopholes. right?
It should be straightforward. I agree. I mean, look, you definitely should not tax unrealized gains. That's ridiculous. That's just so
'cause it could
stupid.
be
If the
worth
stock
nothing.
goes down, it's bullshit, right?
But what they probably could do is,
But a
you
flat
should-
tax
yeah.
makes sense. A sales tax makes sense because look, if you're the richest guy in the world, right, and you're not paying any tax because you're taking loans against the shares that you own in a large company, but if you want to buy $100 million yacht, you should pay sales tax on that, and that's fine, right? Because why not? And then that way everybody pays their fair share.
Yeah, and then these loans is what gets people frustrated. Like they're general public. I was watching this another debate where you've got four rich guys, but they're not like wealthy, like super wealthy. They're in like the 1 to 10 million bracket, right? So they got money, and then the poor guys who are like $30,000 to $60,000 a year bracket, right? And their views on it. And that was a really fascinating debate where this American guy who earned $60K a year was like, why does, say, someone like Elon Musk not pay tax on their unrealized gains, but they can use their unrealized gains to buy Twitter?
Right. However, the companies that Elon Musk owns pays a shitload of taxes.
No,
For the most part.
They do.
They do. And let me tell you, when a billionaire moves from state to state, those state governments, they fight.
They love them.
Yeah, the government,
They want him there.
where he's moving to, they love it. But the state that's losing out, they hate it. I mean, that was a big thing with California, right? California was an exodus out of California.
Yeah, California got to work.
You're right.
And you look at the you look at the exodus of states. It's because of labor laws. It's better for me as an employer to hire someone in Texas because they haven't got so many employee rights. It's better taxes. It's easier to manage. Whereas in California, it's very difficult.
And it's regulations.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? The regulation.
And now they're calling for regulations in AI, which there should be some regulations because it's getting crazy, right? In terms of like being able to take somebody's likeness with voice and video and AI deepfakes, right? There needs to be some regulation, but the guys that are calling for regulation, if they control the regulation, that's a problem because then they can build their companies around the regulation and they will be the leaders, and that will create like a duopoly or a threeopoly, whatever you want to call it, right? Where 3 or 4 companies just run the entire industry, and they essentially force all the little guys out because they won't be able to compete with those regulations because the costs will be too prohibitive.
I mean, there's an interesting theory that there'll be like 3 corporations that actually just own everything. If you think about it, it's been happening very, very slowly. You've got all the big major companies buying up lots of smaller businesses and slowly building these ginormous conglomerates. With AI and the fact that there's going to be such a huge amount of disruption, I mean, theoretically, lots and lots of businesses won't need to exist. And I worry about it. Everyone talks about the exciting opportunity that there could be these one-person billion-dollar businesses, but I don't think that will happen. I think it will happen a couple of times and then everything will get bought out, taken over, ripped apart.
There's a small window. Yeah, there's a small window. But I think that's why these next 5 years is the best time to be an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah.
Make your money now because in 5 years plus, it's going to be UBI.
Well, exactly. Well, you think about it, right? Let's say we were talking 5 years ago. And you and I mean, we were always talking about business ideas and things like that. You and I decided we were going to build one of our ideas, right? And it was a software idea. It was something digital. We're going to have to go and either raise money or fund the development of an MVP and a product. It's probably going to cost $100,000 just for that, to have a workable MVP with all the software development costs and stuff.
That was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Now,
not even 5.
Right.
Now, I can build it for $20.
Right.
I actually have this new idea that I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's very infancy, but I'm building it. I'm very excited about it. I want to disrupt Slack, Teams, Gmail. I won't go into any more than that. I have built probably 80% of the MVP over the last 5 days I work on it every day.
For people who don't know, what's an MVP?
Minimal viable product.
Okay.
I have built, for the last 5 days, I'm 80% done with a minimal viable product that's sellable. It's cost me $50 using this AI.
And this, for
And I
people that
can't
don't
code.
know, Ben doesn't know how to code. This
Not at
is all vibe coding.
It's pure AI. Everyone can use it. The tool I'm using right now is Lovable. I used to use another one, but Lovable's easier. Now, for $50, I've nearly built what 2 years ago would have cost $100,000. Every single human, I can't say everyone, at least in the Western world and most sort of emerging markets can afford to try and invest $50 in themselves for a business. If you think about it, that's one night out, one evening of dinner. You know,
I would say anybody could do it. Even if you save up for a couple of months, you could save $50 and
Yeah,
start a business.
You can save $50
and it can be a
start
game-changing business.
Exactly. And so this is the opportunity now for anyone to build anything. It will be those that are able to execute a market that will do well, right? But anyone can figure out marketing because we've got social media. You can go viral. There's so many opportunities to do marketing now. And marketing is changing. Traditional marketers are failing. You know the turnover rate of CMOs at SaaS, on average, they last for 18 months.
Well, now you could have AI build you a marketing plan.
Exactly.
I
For
saw,
free.
I saw an article that said
For
they
free.
replaced their CMO with an AI. And the AI is just simply coming out with marketing strategy, marketing plans all day long.
Why do you think I had to change my whole business to be AI run? Because I know that soon, if we are not the forerunners, if we're not the leaders of AI, we will be replaced by it.
And I tell you what, if you're not consulting an AI on a major decision, then I think you're missing out on something
If
you
you're
may
not
not
in
have
the board,
seen. There may be blind spots that you don't see that an AI might be able to see.
And you know, you can apply AI to any fucking company. Like
Lawyers, forget about it. I mean, I've made several contracts with people purely on AI, you know, and as the contract goes, the negotiation goes, oh, by the way, you know, we have some more leverage here. Oh, make sure that we're covered on this, right? As long as you know basic contract law.
Yeah, so the playing ground for entrepreneurship, the cost of starting, that wall has gone. You no longer need to raise money. VCs are going to be, I don't know what early stage VCs are going to do. I'm not really sure what's going to change there. Like someone like Kevin Brockland, like when we came up with the idea of Gen-C that he invested in, we needed money to build it, and he gave us a couple of $100,000, right? And we used that to build the product and then get our first customers and market it. Now I actually did a test. I wanted to try and build a replica of Gen-C, and I built it. It cost me $20. I built.
So now they'll be
near
providing
identical
marketing money. Basically, they'll be providing you make the product, I'll provide you the marketing money.
Exactly.
It's almost like a film. Like in a film, you know, you could have people make a film, and then the last money in the film is the marketing money.
Yeah.
Right. So once you have that product, you're going to need money to market it. That's where the VCs are going to come in.
Yeah.
Because you can be slick with it, but let's face it, like TikTok was so successful. A, because it's addictive, but B, it had an incredible marketing plan. I mean, it got on all the celebrities. They brought in a talent agency as an investor to get, so then the talent agency could then have all those actors and influencers push TikTok. I mean, when you were on the London Tube or the New York subway, every freaking sign was TikTok, TikTok, TikTok. That costs money, right? And now TikTok is in the hands of everybody. Yeah. I mean, US has been trying to ban it in the US. They can't do it because people are addicted to it.
I don't use it myself, although I do have an account that we use for posting.
Thank God.
But I don't bloody use it. I mean, I actually am off social media. I hate it.
I think that's great. That's great.
I don't even have Instagram.
I've got this app that every time I log into a social media, it says breathe, and it makes you wait 10 seconds. So that it keeps showing. I can't remember the name of it. It's on my phone, but let me tell people I got to give this app a shout out. Okay, it's called, give me 1 second. It's time to take a deep breath.
That's the name of it.
No, that's what it says. And now it waits and waits and waits.
And now you can get access.
You know what? It's funny. It doesn't even say the name of the app.
You must have installed.
It's called 1sec.
1sec.
Yeah, and at the end of every year, it tells you how much time it saved you. And at the end of 2024, it told me that it saved me like months of time spending on social media,
Yeah,
which is
I'm shocked.
incredible.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I uninstalled Instagram, which most people I know can't imagine, they're like, what, you don't have Instagram? Like, I uninstalled it because they brought out Reels,
Yeah.
which is the TikTok.
Yeah.
And I started doom scrolling.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I was laying in bed. I think I was like, I'm gonna go and get an early night. I think I got into bed at 10. I wanted to catch up on some sleep. I had a lot of sleep debt. And I just opened Instagram before going to bed. 2 hours later, I closed it.
Yeah. I mean,
it was midnight.
I wrote a whole freaking article on this, where you know you just start doom scrolling, and then you snap out of your digital days, and you don't even know what app you're in.
You can't remember anything.
It could be YouTube, it could be Instagram, it could be Facebook. You don't even know. You're like, where am I? What the hell is going on? This is a new form of drug. It's a digital drug that we have no precedence for. We don't know how to regulate it. I mean, this is affecting our body the same way a cigarette or marijuana or alcohol affects your body. When it comes to screwing around with chemicals in your brain, dopamine, serotonin, I mean, that's like ecstasy.
I'm going
right?
to keep my kids away from social media as long as I can. You know, so Australia have just brought out the law where your kids can't have a smartphone in the schools and things like
16 years old, they banned social media for 16-year-olds and below. And you know what? We're sitting here talking about this, and this is a great business idea because this is something I think about all the time, and somebody should build it. A social media app that is customizable, because there have been times where I love YouTube. I love the YouTube content, but I hate shorts because I get stuck in the doom scrolling, right? But if I could edit my feed and
shorts.
delete shorts, delete reels, and still enjoy the rest of the app, that would be fantastic.
I think about this all the time as well, because like Grab food pisses me off because I order a bunch of crap, and I want to. If I could have just Grab to drive me places, or maybe do the delivery where you can get things picked up, and that was it.
Right.
I would have that app.
A customizable interface on one of these major apps would be a killer. I think that would. You know what that's like? That's like an open source. You know, there's software apps
you
like
could build
this.
that because you've got like ad blocker technology and things like that. So you could, in theory, make an ad blocker that blocks all shorts as a widget for Google Chrome. Like the VPN guys. That's the business. It's like a VPN, but it's a block all short form content.
That might be the bit. No, because look, you know what they've been trying to do in the U.S. forever? They've been trying to build a super app similar to China, like WeChat.
Everyone's trying to build a WeChat.
Everyone wants a WeChat in the United States, right? Elon Musk wants it. Mark Zuckerberg wants it.
None of them are going to do it.
They haven't done it. But maybe if you built a clone of Facebook and Twitter that's customizable, you might be able to get that super app, because then you can put whatever you want in it. If you have the car option.
The thing is, what gets the traction?
Right.
Isn't this?
That's the other thing. Right.
This is good stuff. This is what we want. Right. But
I'm sure there's a lot more people out there who want that
yeah,
too.
they want it, but they don't. Do you know what I mean? So I want to quit smoking. But I still smoke.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I'm addicted. Now, look, I can get over it. I can stop vaping. I don't smoke, right? I can stop vaping. But I'm not going to because I enjoy it and I'm addicted to it. I have to really, really, really want to stop. Now, the people who are watching TikTok videos, the people who are watching Reels, and they're addicted to it, they don't like it. But they're not gonna get rid of it.
But do you like it? I don't even like it. I mean,
But
I
they're
don't
not gonna
like
get rid of
Reels
it.
or Shorts, but
They're
I
not
just
gonna
get
get rid of it.
stuck in it. Maybe that's my fault, right? I mean,
Well, it is our fault. Right?
it is.
We've been given the technology and we're using it the incorrect way. But it's like you give me drugs and tell me, oh, this is okay, you can try some. And it's highly addictive.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep taking it.
And
we've been given this drug without any warning of the level of addiction. And they've built this technology. They call us users. We're users.
We are users. Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like software has this. They use the word user. I mean, you've watched the documentary on Netflix.
Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma.
Excellent.
And after like watching that, when I uninstalled Instagram, I started getting lots of emails and lots of other messages to try and pull me back in.
Really?
Like, so-and-so did this, check it out. Like, things like that. Luckily, it's on an email account that I don't even look at. You know what I mean?
Well, the world is just trying to get your attention. It's an attention economy.
Yeah.
These social media giants are probably...
They make money from your attention.
They're
that's it.
Netflix's biggest competition.
Yeah.
Right? Netflix isn't in Netflix isn't in competition with Sony or Warner Brothers or Universal. They're in competition with Google, YouTube,
Your time.
Fortnite. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
They're in competition for our attention.
Well, on that note, I think we covered a lot of bases here, Ben. This was fun, man. This was fun. We got to do this again. Cheers. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for coming on. And I mean, before we leave, why don't you just tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. LinkedIn, Ben Bagg, B-A-G-G. Or you can Google Honey Never Sleeps, which is my podcast, and you'll see me talk to Mike about how he built Mikey's New York pizza.
Yes. Well, thanks, folks. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. All right.
Cheers, man.
Yeah. We went on a bit of a tangent there. We got a good 2 hours.
We went on all sorts of tangents.